There are some weirdos out there, listener. Weirdos like me and you, and that's pretty scary when you think about it. Sometimes being weird can be lonely. I'm sure you all know about that. I definitely do. When the medium-sized men in the room down the hall, inside of that bigger room, analyze my wrinkliest organ, they find the weirdest things. They scrub out all the bad memories and suck up all the good ones. The useful ones, anyway. It's funny how you'll remember things differently. I'm your host, Nik Coffee, and this is Ministerium Radio. Speaking of weirdos, we have a public service announcement about one such weirdo. An extra mundane outlaw with the questionable surname of Verlow. Mr. Verlow has, as of yesterday, broken into a hitherto thought impenetrable vault, making away with a number of anomalous materials, at least 7. So if you see a blue man with a bowler hat and a mustache, or a blue man in a set of overalls, or even a blue woman of some sort, you should report it to the Ministerium through the proper channels. The big boys in the big room on top of the big stairs upstairs are never too happy about slippery characters like that of Mr. Verlow, and an obscene reward has been promised for his capture. I don't know what Mr. Verlow is up to or what they want, but I can assume very safely that Verlow's motives are nefarious at best and at worst burdened with cataclysmic potential. Now onto some Arkham news. Yes, we're all a bit annoyed at the plants that talk too much. Speaking flora might not be what you're used to, but they're all important to the balance of nature in the Arkham area. Through a series of unfortunate events, small, skittish creatures have been crawling through the cracks between worlds and have ended up here, and as many of you might already be aware, these creatures eat cats. By the dozen. These creatures have only one natural predator, which is, you guessed it, the plants that talk too much. Let me pose you a question. Would you rather have talkative flowers or dead cats everywhere? It's an easy choice, listener. I know what you're thinking. When are we going to have the plants that talk too much on the show? Never. Not gonna happen. This next story is a story of brass. Our beloved Ministerium Miskatonic mediums have broken new ground by channeling the inner thoughts and feelings of a bit of metal. Let's begin. I've lived a long life, to that I'm content. I've seen many things, and to that I'm grateful. I've been touched by many, and ultimately I hope that I may have touched them as well. I started my life humbly, in a workshop. I was heated to a glow and beaten with a broad hammer, again and again. This was back when beings like myself were made with imagination and hands, not like all these new fangled pots and pans. I was shining, deep and orange gold. I had an all-important purpose, to help the lady of the house clean the filthy clothes of the man, and their offspring, of those they had many. The offspring grew, but I did not. They too began to dwarf me, and eventually they began to need my help just as their parents did. I became dented. My surfaces became matted and oxidized. The fire beneath me seemed hotter and hotter each day. I became less of a cauldron and more of a strainer. Then a wide brass tube, as the bottom of my structure fell through entirely. Eventually I was little more than a handle, bent and discolored at my extremities, and smaller than I had ever been. One of the offspring whose clothes I'd boiled clean took me away from the small, cold farm. I was taken to a village, and though I was little more than shaped brass with no function at all, she cared for me nonetheless. She grew more and more, and eventually married. Her husband was a stern man, but he wasn't a loon. He didn't know about me, though. If he was to find my little bent body, he wouldn't even know what I was. The girl grew and grew, and so did her family. I, however, didn't grow with them. I was in plain view, but never truly in sight. I was given purpose in my purposeless days. I followed the girl until she was at the door of the beyond, until her mortal coil was too frayed to hold even me. Her grandson, a small, weathered man, took me within his grasp, and I can't say if what he felt in that moment, the feeling that I shared with him, was concrete and true. But we both felt it. A surge of power, a sweltering of the soul. I felt in that moment that we were both granted power. I watch him as I watched her. I feel his hands around my curved metallic body, and I feel the power surging through us. It's the power of sovereign life. It's the power of the soul. Very interesting. It's funny, isn't it, that the handle of a cauldron from years past can hold so much power. It's worthy of some pondering. We were supposed to have a musical guest on the show, but he got lost. He might have taken a wrong turn at Albuquerque. Or maybe he's now in the dimension of mirrors. The dimension of mirrors, for those who don't know, is a reflective and refractive place. Everything that exists there, or rather doesn't exist there, is reflected, refracted, and changed. It's like the mirror part of a funhouse. Imagine, however, that the mirrors inside change you on a molecular level. Imagine watching your body contort in a curved mirror, only to find it warped and changed once you exit. Mr. Moulton, our intended guest, might need to send his instruments through that very same dimension so they fit his being. Would the chords, notes, and nearly indecipherable sounds be warped as he? Is Mr. Moulton, jazz legend and bearded bard, going to invent a new warped genre? We might even have done him a favor. Probably not, though. That's about all the time we have for tonight, listener. If I took away something from our short time together, it would be to value oneself. You could be the least important part of a broken cauldron, but with a little bit of luck, you could be the most important bit of metal to one person alone. Most likely you're just a thing, doing a thing, standing on another thing, which itself is doing a thing. Things ad infinitum, things ad nauseam. I myself am somewhere between the least important insect under a log, hidden in a forest that doesn't exist, and the most important battery of a machine that makes things exist that shouldn't. It's a rat race, listener, and I'm glad for the time we have together. And remember, even the rats in the race are something to someone in the halls of Ministerium Miskatonic. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Ministerium Miskatonic Radio. If you have a story you'd like us to read on the show, you can go ahead and contact us with the email in the description. And if you haven't already, go ahead and punch all those buttons below this video to be notified of future videos. That's all for now. Thank you.